morning, Silver City Church. It is David here, the pastor here at Silver City Church. Great to have you with us this morning. I am out and about on location. You can see that I'm not in my usual little office at home, but it's such a sunny day that I've came out for a little walk. And we are here. I wonder if you can guess where it is. If you know where this is, leave a little comment in the comment section. I'm here with my son Gio. Just picked him up from school. And Gio's practicing his football skills. Don't smash any windows, Gio, please. Do you think you'll smash a window, Gio? No. Famous last words. So hopefully he's a bit more accurate than I was at his age with a football. So thanks for... Oh my gosh. Didn't expect that. Well, that's 2, 3, and 4. Hopefully it's not a 24-hour clock. Well, now you know what time I'm filming this at, don't you? 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon. Hey, really good that you've joined us this morning. We have got a bit of a different feel to the service today. Sometimes, or usually in fact, we have maybe myself, Pastor Ike, or a guest speaker coming along and just giving a sermon talk. But today we're going to try something a little bit different. We actually are having a conversation with a couple that we know and that we love. Ashley and I have known these guys for a long time. Many of you will also know them. They're Alisdair and Erica McKibben, and they've been friends for hours for, ages now. But we've been asking our guest speakers to finish the sentence. And today we're asking Alisdair and Erica to finish the sentence. Experiencing heartache has taught us that. Experiencing heartache has taught us that. And Alisdair and Erica are going to very openly and honestly just share their story with us about how they've encountered heartache in their life in different ways. Mostly we're going to be talking about how that's related to children and miscarriage, loss of babies, periods of barrenness and infertility in their life, struggling to hear from God, doubting hearing from God, miracles, healing, joy, a whole mixture of emotions that we're going to be looking at today. So we are going to crack on with things because I want to give the maximum amount of time to the chat that we've pre-recorded with Alisdair and Erica. So we'll have some Douglas talks now and then we'll launch straight into the chat with them. Hope you're blessed. I'm sure it's going to bless you regardless of whether you've encountered a season of heartache related to children or not. The truths that they bring out in the discussion that we have with them, you can apply to basically any area of heartache. So whether you're in the place where maybe these issues are very real for you, related to children, and maybe not being able to have children, miscarriages, all that, or whether you're in a place where you're encountering heartache in a different way, maybe grief, loss of a loved one, a financial issue, a relationship issue, a health issue, whatever that heartache is associated with, I believe you'll be deeply moved by what Alisdair and Erica bring to us today. So, without further ado, here is Douglas Talks. Smashed any windows yet, Gio? I don't think so.
And go. Hey guys, it's me again, Douglas. And today we're going to be talking about self-control. Yeah, self-control is basically just controlling yourself. Yeah, pretty simple. But self-control is one of the fruits of the Spirit. It's the last of the fruit of the Spirit. And the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And it can be really hard to control yourself. You know, though, actually, we just taught my dog Roscoe. We taught him self-control. We taught him this little trick where it's like you take this little dog treat and you put it on his nose, and he's supposed to stand there with the dog treat on his nose and not move, just like. And he's got the little dog biscuit on his nose, and you can tell that he wants to eat it so bad because he kind of starts to shake. He's like. And then, so he sits there and we say, stay, stay, stay. And then we go, and go. And we say, go. Then he gets to eat the treat. But Roscoe, he's got really good self-control. He doesn't eat that treat until we tell him to. And I feel like if a dog can have self-control, we can totally have self-control. But it's hard, man. It is. It's really, really hard to have self-control because even if we know what's right, we still end up doing the wrong thing. And I don't know what it is about people, but we as people, we know what's right, but we do the wrong thing anyways. Like my grandma, she said, don't go touch the electric fence. My grandma's property, she's got this electric fence, and she said, don't touch it. It's going to shock you. And I knew it was going to shock me, but I still went, and guess what I did? Yep, touch the electric fence. And you know what happens when you touch the electric fence? You get shocked. Yeah, just like my grandma said. And God has told us what sin is. He's told us what's right and wrong. But you know what? We still end up sinning. And bad things happen, just like God said. It can be so hard to have self-control. But God would love to help us to have self-control. And really, the first step is, first of all, just knowing what right and wrong is. God has written in our hearts, we know, we kind of know inside what's right and wrong. But even on some of the tricky stuff, God sent us his word, the Bible. So it's not just that we know in our hearts what's right and wrong, but we can read in the Bible what is right and wrong if things are kind of tricky. So it's good to be in God's word and to read the Bible so that you know what's right and what's wrong. But then you got to do it. Yeah. It doesn't do you any good to know what's right and then do the wrong thing anyways. But God would love to help you to have self-control. All throughout this whole series, we're talking about the fruit of the Spirit. And if an apple tree is a good apple tree, you can tell because it's going to have good apples. And if you or I, we have the Holy Spirit living inside of us and we are living according to the Spirit, you can tell because we're going to have these fruit, the fruit of the Spirit. And so if you would like to have more self-control, you need more Jesus. You need to follow what God has told you to do. You need to give your life to Jesus, and then you need to obey him. And so that's my challenge to you guys today. And this challenge is not only for self-control, but also for all of the fruit of the Spirit. If you would like to have more self-control, if you would like to have more of the fruit of the Spirit in your life, my challenge is that you would draw near to God. That you would spend more time with God, both in the Bible and in prayer, and also too, like going to church and stuff and spending time with other people that are connected to God and other people that believe in God and are living the way that God wants them to, other Christians. And even, watching Christian movies or videos or listening to Christian music, anything that helps you draw closer to God, anything that helps you live according to the Spirit. Because if you have the Holy Spirit living inside you and you are living according to his will, then you will have all of the fruit of the Spirit.
So welcome, Ali and Erica McKibben. It is great to have you with us this morning here at Silver City Church. And as we just explained, you've came along to finish that sentence, which we are really, really looking forward to. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty of what we're going to talk about, let me introduce you both briefly, and then you can tell us a little bit more. But essentially, it's fair to say, Ali, that you and I certainly, and Ash, we have known each other for a long time. In fact, I would go so far as to say, I think I have probably known you your whole life.
Is that
Wow.
do you remember knowing me? What's that age gap?
I think I probably have. I can't remember exactly what year you were born, so I'm not going to give away your age, but yeah, I think we would probably know each other all our life. So we've been to youth things together. We have just grown up, obviously not in the same church at times, but with a very close group of friends, and Ash has known you for a long time too. Let me just introduce you more widely to the Silver City Church family. Many of you might be looking at Ali and think, oh, he looks a bit familiar. And you might think he looks like one of our old pastors, which is because your granddad was one of our pastors, Samuel McKibben, back in, I think, the late 70s, roughly. So that is great. And your great granddad. We are so delighted to have you here with us. Obviously, that's how we know each other, Ali. But to introduce yourself, Erica, I will let maybe Ali explain how you guys met, and you can chip in as well, Erica. Ali, basically, in his mid-teens, I guess, 15, 16, decided to hot-foot it over to America to finish his education. So why don't you guys just explain a little bit about how you met?
Yeah, so I'll do this as briefly as I can, because it's not the priority maybe for today. So as Dave said, I had the opportunity to go out to America, and that was a great experience. And the best part of it was, of course, meeting Erica. So we met in college, and she didn't take a fancy to me at all until a couple of years of kind of friendship, and we kind of then connected through our church and kind of developed a friendship there. And when things start to get serious between us, or somewhat serious, I kind of said really early on that my long-term goals were to go back to Scotland, and so she was always open to that, and actually quite keen. So some people in America don't leave America, but Erica was one of the few that was willing to forsake sunny Texas for rainy Aberdeen. That's very true. You found a good thing when you've got somebody that's willing to do that. So yeah, we got married in 2010 in America, and it was a fun wedding because a whole bunch of Scottish people came over and danced Kaylee dances with Americans, and it was just such a great culture clash. It was so much fun, wasn't it? And then 2 years into marriage, we took the chance to come back to Scotland, and God's hand was over that timing, because of if we hadn't have gone when we left, all the visa stuff changed right after we got into the country, and it would have been really difficult to have gotten in. So praise God for that. And then again, this is probably not a short story at all, down to Glasgow and then back to Aberdeen.
Quite recently, in the last 2 years, we just moved back to Aberdeen, but we were down in Glasgow for the first 6 years of being in Scotland.
So that is how we met, and that's how we got to where we are now.
So you took a roundabout trip, but you ended up in probably the best city in the world. So you finally got here, the Silver City, Aberdeen. It's great to have you here.
Said like a biased Aberdonian. We've got lots of Glaswegians in our church, so they'll be cheering.
Oh, good. I love Glasgow. I loved it.
You know what? I would have just landed the plane in Aberdeen and stayed here.
Yeah.
Erica was the one that was like, let's start our Scottish life in Glasgow.
Don't regret it, not one bit.
No, I know you don't. And it was a phenomenal time. We were so fortunate. We were joined a really nice church there, Rehope, and then shout out to them, and then helped plant a church called Refuge on the south side. Shout out to Refuge, and then so we've had just a real fantastic experience with some amazing people that have kind of been key parts of our journey in life, and so really thankful for those relationships as well. So
sure. So obviously, like we've already said to the folk in our church, and obviously we've been talking about it as well, we are doing a theme at the moment for our guest speakers, which is called Finish That Sentence. And the idea is that the guest speaker just basically comes along, grabs the sentence, and then finishes it however they like. And so we've had a couple, well, in fact, you're the second guys that have done it. So today, the theme that we're kind of hoping just to explore with you both is this sentence: experiencing heartache taught us that. And in some ways, it's quite a challenging sentence to finish. And we'll be going into a few quite, challenging areas, difficult areas, emotional areas that will stir up a lot of thoughts and feelings within people. And so we want to thank you for coming along, being vulnerable, being open to share. Obviously, I know you guys well, and we've obviously been able to read your blog that, Erica, you've been writing for a number of years now. Obviously we will have sent out the information for that, and we'll send it out again. But I would just recommend this chat. We're going to cover certain things, but inevitably there's going to be some areas that we maybe don't get to drill into because of time. So if anyone would like a fuller picture of the journey that these guys, Ali and Erica, have been on, please do get onto the blog and read it. It will really impact your life. I know that for sure. So with all that said, yeah, today we're here to drill down into this topic. Experiencing heartache has taught us that. And I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that as a couple, you guys have been through seasons in your life where there has been lesser and greater degrees of heartache. And in particular, this heartache that we're talking about today has been associated with issues perhaps related to childbirth, having kids, perhaps not being able to have kids, periods of barrenness, miscarriages, a lot of very deep emotive things that are challenging to talk about. But maybe it would be helpful if we just kick off perhaps, and this won't be an easy thing to do necessarily, but if you were able just to give maybe a snapshot tour of what the last 10, 11 years have been like for you guys in regard to some of those areas.
Yeah, so we have been married for 10 years, just over 10 years now.
Yes.
And basically our journey with children has been, we've basically been trying to have children for the last 10 years, pretty much. And we now have 2, which we're so grateful to God for. But after arriving in Scotland, so that was 2 years into our marriage, we got pregnant with our first baby, and then unfortunately and very sadly, that baby, it was not a viable pregnancy. That it turned out that was an ectopic pregnancy, so the baby had planted into one of my fallopian tubes. And so that was a lost baby for us, and that was our first experience. And we were quite young. I was 26, Alisdair was 24, so we're really young, and didn't know. A few of our friends were having kids, but not very many, and we didn't know anybody our age who had lost a baby. So we were kind of navigating that, on our own in a way, but God sent a lot of support. And then, unfortunately, after that, it took us quite a long, well, in our minds, it felt like quite a long time to then have another child. So it was another 2.5 years before we managed to conceive our first daughter, Olivia. And then after that, we thought, it'll be we won't have to wait any longer. God will just give us children now. And we were a little bit surprised that it took us another 2.5 years before we got pregnant with our second wee girl, Zoe. So there's been loss, and there's been what has felt like a lot of waiting. And I can honestly say I don't know which is more painful. I found that both of them were equally very painful situations. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Okay, so thanks guys for giving us that overview. Really interesting, I'm sure, to people who maybe don't know you as well, just to get a flavour of what's brought you here. And like we've talked about, we're going to just explore some of these themes that you mentioned there that you guys have experienced in your life. And it would probably make sense if we started off winding back the clock to that first experience that you talked about. Obviously you had a miscarriage early on, 2012, I think it was, you mentioned. I personally feel like miscarriages and things like that aren't talked about. This particular issue isn't really talked about a lot in the society and generally, and certainly in church. I've not heard it discussed much. And I just wonder if there's anything you guys could share around miscarriage, how you guys experienced it, and what that felt like at the time, maybe how you process those emotions that might be helpful for us to listen to.
Yeah, so it was quite a shock, actually. I think maybe when you're young and you're a bit ignorant and you don't really think that you're going to lose a baby. You know, you don't really think when you get pregnant that it's going to be it's going to be your baby that's lost.
And also because you say, Dave, because it's not really talked about.
Yeah.
As soon as we told people we lost a baby, everybody, oh yeah, I lost a baby. Oh, so-and-so lost a baby. Oh, somebody lost a baby. So it was this weird, like, wait, so everybody's losing babies, but nobody talks about it until it's like happened. So there's like that was like a weird thing. I think that doctors told us that like one in every 4 pregnancies, or maybe it's not. Somebody fact check that, but I do think it's like super high. And so it is strange that it's, and the fact that you're not really supposed to tell people you're pregnant until you've got out of that danger zone is also a wee bit of we found that really strange, because we're like, well, you were pregnant, it's just that you lost the pregnancy, but because you didn't tell anyone, it's like nobody knows because you weren't supposed to tell them anyway. So there's actually quite a lot of stuff that we've learned or just realized that just from our experience that like kind of culturally it's a topic that's not really talked about. So we were shocked.
It was a big shock. And I think you don't expect to feel so attached to a little baby. Like, we only knew that we were pregnant for less than a week. And then just, at the end of that week, we went to have a scan, and then it showed that, it wasn't viable, that the baby had planted into well, they didn't actually know. There was actually a lot of confusion around what was going on with this baby. But it turns out that it was an ectopic, and you don't expect to feel so attached to this little baby, that you've only known about for a week. But already in your mind and in your heart, you're just planning for life with this baby, and you want this baby, and you love this baby. And I just think that so when you lose the baby, it's just it's just heartbreaking. There's no other way around it. It's just there's this person that entered into your life, and then they're snatched away from you. And so I think that, especially as a woman, like everything in your physical body is working to make sure that this thing lives. Everything, your whole body is changing to just revolve around making sure that this baby survives. And so I just think that there's just such a connection between that physical and what is like sewn into your spirit, that everything in you wants this baby to survive. And even if it's like a mixed bag, even if you weren't prepared to have this child, or it's a surprise, or you feel like or your circumstances are tricky or whatever, I still think that because there is this physical and spiritual connection to the survival of this baby, the way that God has intended it, like, it's just devastating when the baby is lost. And so I was heartbroken, just really heartbroken. And it just feels like a genuine loss. I
think it was difficult because our circumstances were such that Erica felt like, maybe it was just a first pregnancy thing, or maybe it was like, although we're pregnant, something doesn't seem right. So we were like in America at the time. We'd come back to Scotland to live. We went over to America in the Christmas to be there for Christmas, and took a pregnancy test there, found out we were pregnant, and then Erica just didn't feel right. And so praise God, like we did go and get a scan, and that's where we found out that it was an ectopic pregnancy. And so I at that point it all happened very quickly, because they were like, this isn't viable. Here's what we think this is. It's not viable. And if we do nothing, not only is the baby not going to live, but it's going to have devastating effects on Erica. And so, they were basically, you need to come back tomorrow and terminate this pregnancy. So that was like a bit of that was a mental kind of
totally unnatural
response to like think, so that was really hard. And then you've got that kind of, I mean, I don't know if this is a lot of detail, but you had to physically then end the pregnancy. So neither of us want that to happen. Erica doesn't want to take an injection to like take medicine to end it. That was like, but they're like, you have to do it. And of course we do. Literally, it's not the baby's not going to live, and all it's going to do is kill Erica potentially. So there's no option. But it was just, so I think in the moment it was all like, this is what we had to do, and it was so sad.
Yeah.
And then off the back of it, and then after a time of processing, it's just it snowballs. It's even more sad because you begin to realize that this was your first baby, and it wasn't just what they call pregnancy tissue. It was something that God was creating, and it just didn't make it the whole way. And I think that's like, it got worse, I think, before it got better. In that way of grief, in terms of grief, once we got some of the physical stuff out of the way, which was catastrophic in a different sense. I don't know if you want to share some of that, but then there was the emotional grief that like kind of carried on for years. But so.
And just so for some people listening, we've used the term ectopic pregnancy there, and maybe you just want to explain really quickly what that is. So my understanding is, from reading your blog, is that's where the fetus, whatever you want to call it, that little baby implants itself into the fallopian tube. Is it too early rather than traveling down? And so basically positioned wrongly. And as it grows, then, like you said, not only is the pregnancy not going to survive, but it basically will likely lead to the mother also dying.
Exactly. Because of course, when that baby implants in there, it will continue to grow. And so, and it's multiplying like
rapid
exponentially every day. And so, so it is life-threatening in the sense that your fallopian tube will rupture because this baby will outgrow its space. It's not meant to grow there, so, and in my case, it did end up rupturing. And it was a totally life-threatening situation that I was in even after the fact. So, so an ectopic pregnancy, it's slightly different than a miscarriage or, other things like that. And in the sense that, this baby didn't get a chance to have a heartbeat or, really live for really very long at all. But, but to us, this baby, the moment of conception, this was a person, that God was creating and was, snatched away. And so for us, there was still a very real loss. And it took a little while for me to come to terms with that. But I had some helpful people in my life who reminded me of, the reality, that this wasn't just pregnancy tissue, like all the medical professionals talk about it. But it was a person, and for us, a very real person that we will meet one day and get to see and hold and touch and speak to. And so, from the moment of conception, that was a person to us. And so it's a real loss, even still.
And you made the decision back then to name the baby, and you guys can maybe share that if you'd like, what you decided to name it. But I think you've touched on a really interesting point, which I think maybe touches the nerve of maybe some of what we're talking about around this issue of miscarriage anyway, is that a lot of people just don't know how to really go about talking about these things. And we struggle perhaps, if a baby was to die after it was born, we kind of know how to react to that. We would have a funeral, we would give it a burial, we would do these things. There's like a societal understanding about how to respond to a situation like that. Whereas when the baby's still in the womb, sometimes there's a difficulty in how we respond to those moments. And particularly if, like you said, the baby maybe it didn't even have a heartbeat yet, but yet still from the point of conception, you felt very much that this is a life that God has given. And so you decided to name the baby. Maybe you just want to share a few of your thoughts around that, around maybe what you called it and why.
Yeah, so there's actually quite an exciting story to the naming of the baby, which I'm going to let you tell because I will take too long to tell it. Can you do it a bit more succinctly?
Basically, after we lost the baby, we had we had a lot of really lovely people around us, older people who had been through baby loss before, and they were just kind of trying to help us figure out how to grieve the loss of this baby. And so they, one of our pastor down in Glasgow at the time had said, have you thought about naming the baby? And to be honest, at the time we just thought, well, that seems a bit weird. Like, we don't know the gender of the baby. We don't no, we've not thought about that.
And he said it quite nonchalantly, just as we were leaving for tea, they'd had us round and they were, so sad and grieved with us. And then at the end, they're like, have you thought about naming the baby? And we're like, no. He's like, okay, just think about it. And we were kind of like,
oh, okay.
All right, it must be, is that a thing?
So I think after that, we just thought, it's not really something we feel that we need to do. But then as time went on and we were praying, there was a couple in our church who really kind of pastorally came alongside us throughout the whole process of having lost the baby, then going through this longer season of not getting pregnant again. And they prayed with us like pretty much all the time. And they were just so amazing.
Shout out to Dan and Jen Ruskell if you ever watch this.
Oh, they're amazing. But they, out of one of the kind of prayer ministry sessions with them, Darren, the guy, had said, he felt like God was saying something about
there's something about
the baby's name. And he was like, have you named the baby? And we were like, no, but we haven't.
You're the second person to say that. But he was saying that there's something.
It was as in God was saying, like, there's something in the name of this baby that you need to kind of pay attention to. And so we were like, okay, so we'll think about that. And then
that for us, just so this is all this sort of stuff is a wee bit outside of our kind of, maybe even our spiritual comfort zones. Like, we kind of like we were still kind of growing in some of these, like in some of these kind of, I don't even want to call them, I don't know what the right word is, but it was new to us, in some ways, and it was stretching us spiritually, and we were happy to go there and excited about what the journey that God was taking on us spiritually. So it was a really nice time, but it definitely was a new thing for us. But they had it, obviously it was very delicately done and and it was well received on our end, but just to say that. And then up to Aberdeen.
So then one weekend we went up to Aberdeen to visit our Alisdair's brother and sister-in-law, and we went to their church that weekend. And after the service, the pastor was just going around it was really lovely. He was just going around to the various people in the congregation and just saying, like, can I pray for you? How can I pray for you? Which we thought was really cool. And so we were like, well, you could pray for this church that we're helping to start down in Glasgow. So he began to pray initially for Alisdair. And then he kind of turned and looked at me and was very intently looking at me, almost to the point that it felt a bit like awkward. but like seriously intently looking at me, and then he said to me, God favors you. And I didn't know what to say, but I was just like,
cool,
wow, and then he was like, no, you're favored by God. And then he went on to talk about my role in this church, and variously was prophesying over me different things about this church. But then he went like on a totally different tangent, and he was like, I see you what did he say? I see you praying for women who can't conceive, and them being able to, God giving you the power to be able to conceive. And at that point, I mean, we had experienced loss, and then we had been trying for a wee while now, and this was like very, very a big wound. And I just started crying my eyes out. So at that point, he kind of got the hint of what was happening there. And then he just started praying for us that we would be able to conceive. And he was praying that I remember him specifically saying, for a child from their own body, Lord. And so that was like one of the first times that somebody had prophesied over me, like ever, like quite personally. And I was really, it was like quite an experience for me with the Lord, that he saw me and he knew me, and something so specific as that. It was really impactful. So anyway, back to the naming the baby story. As we began to think about names, Alisdair had always really loved the name Anna for a girl. And I was always like, it's all right.
No offense to our sister-in-law, Anna. We do love that name.
But I never really thought, but for some reason, the name Anna kept coming back into my mind. I should say that we had already prayed separately, and both felt that this was a girl that we lost. Definitely. So that was just something that God had given us separately. And then we agreed that's what we thought the baby was. And so Anna kept coming to my mind, and I was like, Anna, it's so weird that I would think about this name, since I never was really into it. But then one day I was like, I should really look and see what this name means. And then I looked at the name, and it means favored by God. And, quite often in the Bible, they name their kids like based on things that are going on in their own lives. It's like, it's not always necessarily about the kid necessarily. It's about like what God's doing in them. And so it just seemed like, it's definitely Anna, based on what that guy had said. And, especially if it was like kind of counteracting this lie in my mind that, I've experienced this loss and we're not getting pregnant again. It's easy to think, God's forgotten me. He's not blessing me. He doesn't see me. He doesn't, but the exact opposite was true. God was saying to me, I actually favor you. Yeah. You're favored by me. And this is going to be like a testimony to you that this reality, I favor you, is really what's happening even in this season. So it was really.
Yeah, so it wasn't just a name picked out of a hat. Well, it was by me, but God, God's so good. He takes little old me and like, I like the name Anna, and I actually brings it like with so much power. Yeah. And so much, like, it just felt like, wow, who knew? Like, a lot of meaning, yeah. And so
it's a beautiful name. Funnily enough, our the youngest daughter, Alara, one of her middle names is Anna. So I can't remember the other one. One of them is Anna. No, I do remember the other one. The other one's Grace. So
double Grace, isn't it?
So there's lots Grace of Grace and favored, and it's a beautiful name. Name.
Do you feel like there was some healing, like in the name, being able to name? I'm just thinking about other couples who might be experiencing the same thing or have experienced. Even in that process, do you think healing comes in giving a name to the baby? Or it's a really personal God.
I do. I think so. I have friends who've lost babies and they've named them, and I have friends who haven't named the babies that they've lost. And I don't know if it really affects the way that you grieve, as long as you are grieving a baby, So I think God knows what people need in order to grieve. And I think I really felt like, God, I don't know how to grieve. I don't know how to process this at all. So I'm just entrusting the process to you. Yeah. So whatever I felt God was like leading me to do next was what I did. Yeah. And so I think for some people, naming the baby will be really healing, because it'll help them just
for me, it was more tangible at that point. Like, exactly. It wasn't, you go from like,
it's a person,
pregnancy tissue, to no, it's actually a baby. Actually, it's a baby with a gender. Actually, it's a baby with a gender and a name. And at that point, you're able to, like, I don't know, for me, just personalize it, imagine it. And that was the thing when I remember sharing this, like, this mini story with our family to tell them, like, hey, just so you know, we named this baby, because you want other people to. We're really big on just sharing our stories with people, and it's important, I think, for family to then be able to say, yeah, we'll do that with you. Like, we'll call her Anna, and grieve Anna with you. And that was actually
it's really lovely for other people.
Other people to be, the message that came back was like, we love Anna, like, we miss her already, like, and that was actually quite a lovely thing, I think, for other people to then, it wasn't just this untalked about sadness. So yeah, I think for some it can be a really impactful thing, and it was for me.
I think you just touched on that, a really interesting issue there. You obviously mentioned there that your family, as you guys shared your story with them, they were able to buy into that and kind of support you in a different way, I guess, than they would have been otherwise. But I think wider than that, and I've experienced this in my own life, we often feel that we can lack the vocabulary or the words to say. I'm talking about if one of my friends has lost a baby, if one of my family members have lost a baby, what do I say, what do I do in those moments is very, very, can feel very difficult. I wonder, you've obviously been on that side of the coin where you have lost the child. What did you guys find helpful, not helpful? And I guess there might be some kind of personality comes into play here where not everyone will react in the same way. But is there anything that you would advise people who are trying to support someone who has lost a baby?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I can totally identify both sides, to be honest. Like, before, I knew quite a lot of older, in the church in the States, a lot of the women who were mentoring me would share their stories with me about losing babies or having to wait to have, for long periods of time to have babies. And I just had no frame of reference for it. I couldn't understand why it was so painful. I couldn't, although I knew, like, it should feel sad, I didn't know how to, I just had no frame of reference for it. I just didn't get it, and so I knew that, like, I should say, oh, I'm so sorry, but I really, beyond that, no kind of sense of compassion or anything. I just didn't. I didn't, and that's just me being honest. I had no idea what that would have been like for people. And now, being on the other side of it, it's equally as difficult to know what to say, because it's just heartbreaking, and in a way you don't really know what to say. You just know to say to people, and this is quite often what people say to me, I lost a baby, like people just want to share, to know that they understand the suffering. They want to share in your suffering, to show that they understand that. And even if they don't have words to comfort you, they just want to say, I get it. It's heartbreaking, it's horrible. Nobody wants that to happen. I still think about that baby that I lost, and to be honest, when people lose babies now, I still think to myself, I'm just so sorry. Like, I know it's just utterly heartbreaking, and I know that you love that baby, and I know that you wanted that baby, and I'm so sorry. It shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen. Like, you shouldn't have lost a baby. Just like when people die, I just think people shouldn't die. It's like, it's just horrible. And so there's something just about being with them in that suffering. And
I think that's so well said, but just being in it with them, not trying to either fix it or try and move them on too quickly, or kind of like, the next one will be, I think it's about just waiting until they're ready to move, and to a certain extent, or at least for, especially initially, it's just being there in them with it. And so if you've not experienced the loss, that doesn't mean you can't just wait and just be there and say, I've got no idea what this must be like, other than it must be terrible, and I'll stay here until some of that subsides, you know, and stay in that, when I don't, you know, stay there emotionally or whatever. So, but it's difficult. But I think as soon as you recognize that it's difficult, it's the start. I think.
That's a big thing. Just not shying away from it if you don't understand it. And I think it's fair enough just to be like, you know, I've never experienced that, and I just can't imagine how hard that would be. You know, like, I'm so sorry. I just like that. Just sounds horrible, and I'm so sorry for your loss.
And then if I can say one more thing, I think it's about, like, as you say, don't shy away from it. Yeah. So in the first conversation, engage, but then don't feel like you can't. They're still grieving the next time you hang out with them, probably. Yeah. So it's okay to be like, hey, how you doing? Rather than avoid the obvious, like, you're probably not well. You know, you might, they might be on a better day and they're like, hey, actually, you know, like, God's done this week and he's spoken to me here and I'm feeling like a little bit more hopeful or happier, and he's totally healed that wound. Amazing. But don't feel like you need to avoid them for 2 weeks because you don't know how to handle it, right?
People don't want to open up the wound, or, you know, I'm thinking of it, and they don't want to inflict any more pain, so they'll just avoid it altogether. But it's good to know that you shouldn't be shy about it and just ask.
Well, as you say, I mean that's maybe, but that is also us. So, like, we're a bit more like,
we're quite open.
So there might be some people that don't feel as comfortable.
It's more private,
and they don't tell anyone, or they tell only one other person, and they just have a stiff upper lip. There's a wee bit of a culture thing there as well, I think, is like, is the reason you don't tell anyone you're pregnant until 13 weeks, because these things happen so often, and then people just go through the loss themselves. And I don't know, that's not how we did it.
It reminds me of a quote that one of my favorite person that I quote a lot is Rick Warren, and he obviously encountered heartache of his own where he lost his son, his teenage son, I think he was at the time, through suicide. And him and his wife, Kay Warren, they talk about their experience of grief. And he says, grief isn't something you get over, grief's something you go through. And it's not just like this event that suddenly, oh, that's it, it's gone and I'm past that now. It's, you know, even now, probably years on after that event, they would still describe themselves as grieving over their son. And similarly, perhaps with you, guys, even though time may pass, there'll still be that grief associated with that baby. Let's switch gears a little bit, and we're now going to kind of move into another issue, another theme that you guys have also encountered in your journey. And I guess different words could be used to describe this, but for want of a better expression, you can tell me if there's a better one, but the whole topic of barrenness, or potentially, you know, waiting to get pregnant. I think in your blog, you make the point that perhaps after falling pregnant the first time, you maybe it wasn't something you were desperate to do right then, but after you became pregnant the first time with Anna, and then obviously Anna was lost, you then started encountering these really quite intense feelings of wanting to have a child after that. But things maybe didn't quite go like that, did they? It took a while. There was a period of waiting, of probably like, what's going on here, God? I'm wondering where God was in all of this. Do you guys just want to speak a little bit into that whole issue of barrenness, of waiting to conceive? Seems like nothing's happening. How did you find that season in your life, and what that heartache element of it? How did you process all of those things?
Yes, well,
a big question, isn't it?
Where do I begin?
But let me read something that might give you a little head start with your answer. You write in your blog, I've got it here in my notes, it says, barrenness has also taken us through endless cycles of expectation, excitement, disappointment, and then despair. So this cycle of expectation, excitement, disappointment, and then despair. Wonder if that just lines it up for you.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, there's obviously a physical cycle that happens. And I think that you know, and it kind of, that cycle would just kind of go on and on and on, you know, monthly or whatever. But the emotional side of it, every month to see, oh, we're not pregnant again. You know, there's this hope at some point, oh, maybe this is it, you know, maybe this will be the month that God answers our prayers, and this will be the month that, you know, he blesses us with a child. I mean, think, you know, that's what, gosh, 2.5 years is a lot of months. And it's exhausting. It's just emotionally exhausting to just kind of be up and down and up and down. And I think especially when you're exercising faith,
that's good.
It becomes even more exhausting, in my opinion.
Yeah, because if you didn't care, or if you're trying not to care, and, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think it's, you know.
But you're going through, I feel like there's more effort in terms of belief. Your you know, faith is something that you exercise. It's something that you have to work at in a way, you know, and it is a gift. It is a gift, but it's also something that you have to put your faith in God, you know, and you have to pray about something. It takes effort, you know, and so just all of these things, you know, we were praying and we were fasting and we were putting our hope in God. And, you know, the amazing thing about God is that apparently barren women have like a soft spot in his heart, because there's so many women in the Bible who go through this, and that he, not only do they go through it, but he actually miraculously grants them like an open womb for them to have a baby. So I took a lot of comfort in that, and not only comfort, but I took that as,
you do this,
Lord, this is who you are, this is what you do, so come on, I'm waiting on you to do this in my life, and to believe him for that. But
that takes a lot of energy every month to then, but it's
again,
not,
and again,
okay.
and again.
So then disappointment. Okay, let's go again. Let's cheer yourself up. Let's pray. Let's fast. Let's see. Bring other people around you, you know, so you're asking other people to come around you, and
it's exhausting for the people.
They're kind of like, oh, really? Is that the prayer request again at this Bible study?
Yeah.
What impact did that cycle have on your own personal relationships with God? You know, like you say, that cycle going to the highs to the lows, almost month after month. How did you guys? And maybe you didn't for sometimes. Maybe the reality of it is it did have a negative impact on your relationship with God. Maybe it'd be helpful to hear that if it did, but how did you guys try and maintain a healthy relationship with God during those times?
Yeah, well, I think so it might be helpful just to say that the seasons of waiting for Olivia was a very different season than the one waiting for Zoe, and for me they're just two totally distinct journeys, really. And so I would say with the waiting for Olivia, you know, there was a lot of really deep disappointment, you know, but it wasn't, it never turned angry. It never turned bitter. It never turned into any sort of like, you know, personal hurt with God. But it was something that I would always bring to him, and I was sad about it. I was properly sad about it, and I did hold him responsible. So I would, you know, I was coming to him like, you're the one who can change this, and I'm so sad. And you know, and I think that the way that I always just processed through it with him, and I just brought it to him, and he is just really able to comfort his children. And that's just what he did with me. He spoke to me all the time in different ways, through dreams, through his word. I mean, I was just always spending time with him, and he would just speak to me. And so every time I would say that, oh, I'm so disappointed again, or I'm so sad that we don't have a baby, and I don't understand why, he would speak to me about what was going on in my heart, and he would provide something, some sort of bread, that rhema word from God, that fresh, living and active word for that moment that cuts right into what you're needing to hear. And he would speak to me, and it would comfort me, and it would satisfy me, until the next round of disappointment came again, and he would give me faith to believe him again, and to keep believing him. And quite often what he would say to me is, what do I say that I'm going to do? And I would say, well, you say that you can bring dead things to life, like my body, if it's not producing life. and so he says, right, then believe me, and I would just, and then he would give me the strength to believe him. Yeah. And so with Olivia, the journey with that was just, there was so much of that sort of him imparting strength to me, imparting faith to believe him, imparting perseverance and the ability to keep going, keep believing him. And he just spoke to me a lot, and prophetic, personally, but then also prophetically. We were given lots of words about children that just were impossible for people to know. And so I just really knew he's on the case. So that just provided so much comfort and was really life-giving. And if I hadn't had that, I don't know what I would have done. I definitely wouldn't have managed.
Yeah.
So I think he just knew what I needed. I think he knew what we needed, and he's a good father, and he gave it to us.
Yeah, and I think that's somewhat testimony to Erica's relationship, quite a sweet relationship she has with God, which is one that is built on time spent with him. And so by her prioritizing that allows God to speak into the hurt, and by not everybody does whatever they want with their spare time, right? But seeing Erica go through that, it was I'm going to get alone with God, and I'm going to go to him again, and I'm going to come back to him again. And so therefore he's able to speak into the hurt, and she's not running to vices here or there, or trying to distract, or just trying to stay positive and keep going, take up a new hobby. She was drilling it. She was zeroing in with God. And so I think that's quite a powerful reality. And I think if there's a nugget for people there that are going through it, is that God's so good, right? And he goes over and above, right? So you've got other people that we don't know, that don't know us, telling things to us that were only God could have told you that. That's so powerful. And we can share so many stories of that, and we will maybe another time. But also there's something about being disciplined. I don't know if that's the right word, but just prioritizing, I think, is the right one to say, God, I want to spend time with you to hear from you on this, because I know you want to speak. And I think that's a powerful, that was probably a big part of, I think, in your life, of course, and in both our lives, is that there's certain rhythms that we have in place. Spending time with him, spending time in the Word with him helps us through those seasons. Being connected to a local church. I mean, as I mentioned before, our friends were, how's it going? Oh, still nothing? Okay, we're gonna pray again with you. And some were more tired than others, I'm sure, but being connected to a local church, hearing God's word preached, worshiping on a Sunday, connecting in a small group. I think those rhythms that we had in place were those things that sustained us through that time. I don't know how you go through loss, barrenness, heartache without God. Personally, it's impossible.
And we also, the church that we were connected to, not our church, not the church plant that we helped start, but the one that we got connected to before that, the pastor, was a really amazing man of faith, and I was always constantly encouraging his people, his church, to wait on God, to learn to wait on God for promises that he's spoken. And to do that, he really taught people how to do that well by demonstrating it himself and showing the ups and downs of disappointment. I think anybody who waits on God for anything goes through the same cycle of expectation, hope, disappointment, this isn't it, and we see that in the Bible as well, with people who are waiting on God for promises. And it's the same sort of cycle, really. And I think I was always very encouraged by his teaching on that and his life, because he continued to persevere in prayer. He continued to believe God, even though it was a long-standing prayer, and just to believe God for who he is and what he says he does, and to hold him to it. He really taught that. He really taught us a lot about prayer.
Shout out to Brian Ingram.
But really amazing.
I keep pretending that these people are going to listen. I don't know if they ever will. But you can Google them.
We will hunt them down, Ali. We'll send in the DVD of this if we need to.
DVD. Nothing to play them on now, is there?
VHS. I think these have shared some real light parallels there.
But it was tough. But then, just to go with Zoe.
Oh well, come on, let's tell them. Can we tell you a quick story about then how we got pregnant with Olivia? Can we, rather than go to the next one, just real quickly? So then this is incredible because so we're trying, nothing happened. And then I'm like, okay, I think we should get some investigators, like, just find out what's going on here. So let's refer us. And Erica's like, dreads the idea because again, we've had prophecies, people saying, God is telling us, and people usually say, like, you really shouldn't prophesy about, what's babies. That phrase you use, like babies or marriage.
Those are dispatches.
Exactly. So, but people say, so I usually don't do this, but I just want to say it. And of course, floods of tears because we're believing God for, so amazing stuff, right? But then I'm like, let's just get checked out anyway. Let's just find out what's going on. And I think that's okay. There's nothing right or wrong there.
Absolutely nothing wrong with that.
But I think for Erica, there was like but like I feel like I'm holding on to this promise at the same time. So anyway, long story short.
Well, but just to say that, go on then. I felt like I needed to, because Alisdair was like, I really think we should just go for these investigations. And I really felt that we shouldn't, because I knew it was just going to be God. I just thought, I just have this conviction that it's not going to come through any other means. It's just going to be by God.
Almost didn't want to water it down, if that makes,
Well, no, but it was just a conviction that I had. It was just something from the Spirit. And I think that's not the case for other people, and it's totally fine. And I felt like when I was praying about it, because I was like, God, I just feel this is going to be from you, and I just don't know about going for these investigations. And then I felt that God said to me, you're not even going to have to go. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll just write that down that you said that, but I'll just, wait on that one.
Yeah.
But I felt, because Alisdair's my husband and he was really keen, I was like, you know what, like, I've got to honor the fact that he's wanting to do this. This is his journey too. I can't just say, no, we're not going to do that. So we got the referral from my doctor.
Go on then, Karen. And then, so I'm trying to say a long story short. So then we get the date. We get the date for the appointment. We get the appointment, and it was like in 2 weeks' time or whatever. So again, really challenging, because Erica's now like got this like, well, God, here's a timeline. You've got 2 weeks essentially, and there's
quite a lot that happened.
I mean, Erica went for
2 months leading up.
The 2 months leading. I know, but Erica went for prayer. We had prophecies spoken over us. I went for prayer for healing, and every single one of our babies has always been preceded by somebody praying for physical healing. Like literally, like somebody prays for physical healing, and I get pregnant in a week. That week. With all three babies. So these two old ladies at this in Glasgow, in the healing room in Glasgow. Shout out to the healing room in Glasgow. Amazing. And they prayed for her, and just these women of faith. And so the day of, and then I think it was it not the night before you made that case? So then 2 nights before. This is cool. This was no. So 2 nights before, I was like, God, I just need to know, like, am I pregnant?
am I going to be pregnant? And I actually said to God, this is just one of the things you really, most people don't do because it's a bit crazy. But I said to God,
I don't know what she's going to say here.
If I'm pregnant, can you just confirm it in a dream to Alisdair?
Oh, I almost didn't share this.
And
that's crazy.
And
I forgot this.
So we woke up the next morning and I totally forgot, basically. And it was like an hour after we woken up. So I was like, hey, do you have any dreams last night? I didn't tell Alisdair this, by the way. And he was like, no. And I was like, of course he didn't. I waited too long. And I was like, God, please, this time I will remember to ask him first thing in the morning. Just let me know if I am pregnant, just please let me know through a dream to Alisdair.
Very specific.
Bizarre. And then
isn't there a verse about not testing the Lord your God?
Yeah, there is. And then so I woke up the next morning and the first thing on my mind was, did he have a dream? And so right when he turned on the light, I was like, hey, do you have any dreams last night? And he was like,
trying to play it cool.
He was like, oh, yeah, actually I had a dream. You told me you were pregnant. And I was like, oh. And for me, it was like, I'm pregnant. I don't need to take a test. I don't need to know anything else. That could only be God, So that was an amazing thing. And then that was just a couple days before this appointment.
So the appointment was the morning, the Monday morning or whatever. And
and I basically put off taking a test because I just couldn't bear the thought of seeing a not pregnant. It was just dreadful. So we're like, we'll take a test the morning of the appointment and we'll just deal with it either way. And then the night before, I laid out this whole case before God, all the reasons why he should answer this prayer. I can't even remember all the things in it. It doesn't matter, but basically just all the things that he says in his word. Yeah. This is who he is. This is what he does. Because he answers prayer, because he's alive, to let other people know that God's real and that he's in this and he cares about barren women and to destroy the works of the enemy. That was a big one for me. I was like, God, just destroy the works of the enemy and redeem what I felt he had snatched away. Yeah. And so we woke up the next morning, we took a pregnancy test, and we were pregnant.
It was incredible. The best phone call I get to make to the investigative people. I'm like, sorry, we're not coming to our appointment. We're pregnant. She's like, okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Congratulations. So yeah, that was really, really amazing.
Wow.
It was an amazing lead up.
I'll let you into a little secret. When we were filming this and we were recording the discussion with Ali and Erica, I don't think any of us really knew how long it was going to take to film. We weren't sure if it was going to take half an hour, 2 hours. Well, it ended up it did take 2 hours. So what you've seen is the first part of the discussion Ashley and I had with Ali and Erica. Now, when I came to edit down for today's service, I was going through it and really there wasn't very much, if anything, that I wanted to take away from the chat to squeeze it in to the time that we had available this morning. So what I've decided to do, rather than cut it and crop it and lose out on some of the absolute gold that Ali and Erica share with us, we've decided to do this in 2 parts. You've just watched the first part. We're going to make the second part available on our YouTube page right now. So that means that you or anyone that's watched the first part, if you want to watch the concluding second part of what they have to share with us, you can go on to the Silver City Church YouTube page right now. The details will also be posted up on our Facebook page. And you can just watch the second half, the second hour of the chat that Ashley and I had with Ali and Erica. Let me tell you, if you enjoyed the first part, then the second part you are going to find equally crazy, equally enthralling, equally emotive, equally challenging. But you will see God working and meeting this couple in an incredible way. I really mean that, in a miraculous way. So we're going to draw things to a close today because, as you know, usually our services maybe finish just before 12. So we overran that slightly this morning. But what has been shared this morning has been so life-giving. And we just believe that God is going to use what Ali and Erica have shared for his glory. So Let's end this morning by singing a worship song together. And I just encourage you, perhaps it's your first time at church or at online church, listening to Ali and Erica's story, and you're maybe just questioning in yourself now, maybe there is a God, listening to what these guys have been through. And if you listen to the second part, you will definitely be challenged if you do not believe that there's a God. Let me tell you that for sure. So we're just going to sing a song. Maybe you want to join in. If you don't yet know God, maybe you can just open your heart to him right now and just say, God, if you're there, then just show me that you're real. Show me that you love me. Believe God will meet you at your point of need where you are this morning. Thanks for listening this morning. Trust that you've been blessed. Like I say, get onto our YouTube page. Right now, that second part of the video is going live. So if you want to watch it right now, you can go on and catch the second hour. And likewise, if you want to watch it later, it will all be on our YouTube page. We'll also post up the whole 2-hour video for people to watch. If they want to share it with someone, perhaps you feel would benefit from watching it. Ali and Erica, thank you so much for taking part in this. You're absolute superstars, and we've loved just being with you, hearing your heart. And we really pray that God blesses you guys with the way that you've blessed us so freely with sharing your experience. Take care, everyone. It's been a real pleasure having you here with us this morning. Love you all. Looking forward to seeing you all in person very soon. And the good news is that Gio has not yet smashed the window. So famous last words, but so far we can get out of here without having to pay the janitor a fine. You come out to say goodbye, Gio? You've not smashed the window yet, have you?
I've only hit the wall.
Only hit the wall. That's good. That's like most of Aberdeen's free kicks. Take care, guys. Love you all. Stay safe.
Would ask me about how am I feeling? Oh, actually, I'm not feeling very good. Now that you brought it up, so I'm that person. Thanks for bringing it up. Yeah, it sucks actually. but then I'm easily distracted. Yeah, do you want a cookie? Oh yeah.
Disappointment, because not only was I totally disappointed that we weren't pregnant, but it like sent me spiraling, because I was like, whoa, like I've got this totally wrong, and how do I like trust myself to hear God anymore? Ouch, that just hurts, you know, because it was just like I was like, I can't believe God for this anymore. It feels like I just have nothing left, you know.
Thankfully, at least at this time, she did say, hey, no pressure, but I believe God's given me a timeline.
Yeah, that was all I said.
So if you could just come back to me with whatever you think is the timeline for this next baby, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, no problem, you know.
Let me sleep on that. and so I did, right?
So when we came to this next season, like you say, Dave, I didn't expect that we would be waiting. I thought we learned that lesson, and I thought very wrong about that. I just thought, why are we here again? Why are we here again? And I didn't know how to navigate through it. I kept trying to go through it the same way I went through the old one, and it wasn't working.
Why would I go and try and start a church when I'm like this? You know, and so
I've got nothing to offer.
It was
a bit more growth flow. But no, in this instance, he was like, no, like I really feel strongly this is what we should do. And I was like, oh no.
Oh no, my husband's got an opinion.
No, but I just felt
these things haven't just come in off the back of the good news, right? Like some of these things were learned in the pain, and so
surrounds me. Just one word, the dark believe for greater things. There's no power like the power of Jesus. Let faith arise, let all agree. There's no power like the power of Jesus. I will believe for greater things. There's no power like the power of Jesus. Let faith arise, let all agree. There's no power like the power of Jesus. For I will believe for greater things. There's no power like the power of Jesus. Let faith arise, let all agree. There's no power like His power. There's nothing that our God can't do. There's not a mountain that He can't move. Oh, praise the name that makes a way. There's nothing that our God can't do. There's nothing that our God can't do. There's not a prison wall He can't break through. Oh, praise the name that makes a way. There's nothing that our God can't do. Just one word, you calm the storm that surrounds me. Just one word, the darkness has to retreat. Just one touch, and I feel the presence of heaven. Just one touch, my eyes were open to see. My heart can't help but believe. There's nothing that our God can't do. There's not a mountain that He can't move. Oh, praise the name that makes a way. There's nothing that our God can't do. Just one word, you hear what's broken inside me. Just one word, and you revive every dream. Just one touch, I feel the power of heaven. Just one touch, my eyes were open to see. My heart can't help but believe. Oh, there's nothing that our God can't do. There's not a mountain that He can't move. For praise the name that makes a way. There's nothing that our God can't do. There's nothing that our God can't do. There's not a prison wall He can't break through. Oh, praise the name that makes a way. There's nothing that our God can't do. I will believe for greater things. There's no power like the power of Jesus. Let faith arise, let all agree. There's no power like the power of Jesus.